Hi there, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy, and I'm your host, Joe Firestone. Oh, hi, Andy. You're there. You were there today at 2:32 p.m. Okay, I guess you're not here now. So, uh, anyway, our topic for tonight on Empowering Democracy is geopolitics, and this is Pepe Escobar night. And what we're going to do tonight, hi Kay, nice to see you. Okay, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go over three new articles by Pepe Escobar. I do want to clarify one thing. There was a little problem with Facebook. Facebook did not like the sources of the Pepe Escobar articles, of two of the three of the Pepe Escobar articles. So in order to get the stream actually streamed to Facebook, I had to find the same articles that were published, okay, by other sources. So when I bring up the articles, you'll see that they're not the same sources as the articles in the YouTube description, but they are the same articles. So if you're watching, okay, on YouTube, you are getting links there to this very same articles. Okay, so I did want to make that clear uh, in case there was any confusion. Um, okay, so I am ready to go. These are great pieces on geopolitics. And of course, they have the wonderful mix of philosophy and literary allusions and political theory and geopolitics and current affairs relevance that you get, okay, from Pepe. So I should make also one more announcement. On Thursday of last week, I said things were going to be different this week, and that I was going to do. I was switching over to short shows, roughly 20 minutes apiece. Okay, but when I announced that again on Friday, the same people were not actually quite there. In other words, there are little different people there, okay, on Friday. And they persuaded me that I should do at least one long show per week. So this Tuesday night is the long show. And it's an empowering democracy show, okay, on geopolitics. I don't know that the long show will always be on the international system. I may be mixing that up, and the long show next Tuesday might be on something else. But anyway, tomorrow I'm going to the short shows, and I will make an attempt to do 3 short shows tomorrow, and for the rest of the week. In other words, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for the short shows. There's also something else a little bit different here tonight. For a reason, okay, the reason is that Dee and Madeline were working together on a petition having to do with the Silwan neighborhood in Jerusalem. They wanted to have a show on that. They weren't able to do it, okay, at 8 because Madeline wasn't able to do it at 8. So they rescheduled it for 9 p.m. So, of course, tonight there's a rare conflict, okay, between their show, okay, and my show. And of course, I can't be on their show because I'm doing my show. So, okay, but normally I will be on D's show, okay, at 8 p.m. Uh, on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday if she has a show for all those days. And I'll probably be joining her on Saturday night as well. Anyway, I just wanted to clear up that business before I go to the first article by Pepe Escobar. Really wonderful articles tonight. Title of the first one is Will the Hegemon Ever Accept a New Westphalian World Order? That word Westphalian may require a little bit of explanation for some of you. The current structure, shall we say, of the international system goes back to the year, if I recall correctly, 1648, when the 30 Years' War in Europe was resolved by the Treaty of Westphalia. The Treaty of Westphalia prescribed sort of a code, of diplomatic protocols for the nations, okay, of Europe, that then going forward defined the rules of competition and also diplomacy within the nation-state system from 1648, but going forward. But in 1648, there was a new order that was accepted, okay, in European politics. And that was established by the Treaty, okay, of Westphalia. And a lot of those basic rules still exist in international relations today. But of course, we don't have a new world order. Today we have a world order which is pretty much, okay, in chaos. And Pepe Escobar, who has a good grounding, okay, in history, recognizes the need for a new Westphalian world order to define the character of the new multipolar system which we are seeing, okay, arise, okay, around us. So, okay, I brought up this blog post in a publication called the UNC Review, an alternative media selection. And it appeared there, but it's appeared in 4 or 5 places. And I originally picked it up in this Strategic Culture publication. But I'm not going to read from that particular publication because for some reason that publication is thought to violate the Facebook standards. So they won't allow me to stream to Facebook if I was going to use that publication. So I looked for the same article in another publication, and the one I picked was the UNZ Review. So here we are at the UNZ Review, and I'm going to use that as the basis for my reading, commentary, and discussion. for this article. There will be no peaceful road towards a Westphalian world order. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride, says Pepe Escobar. A new book by scholar Glenn Deason, who's a university professor in Sweden, the Ukraine War and the Eurasian World Order, out in mid-February, which means it's not quite out yet, asks the make or break question of the young 21st century. Will the hegemon, that's us folks, that's the United States, will the hegemon accept a new geopolitical reality, or will it go Captain Ahab on Moby Dick and drag us all to the depths of a nuclear abyss? So that's actually quite a paragraph, right? Okay, a reference, to the Westphalian world order and to Captain Ahab and Moby Dick. An extra touch of poetic beauty is that the analysis is conducted by a Scandinavian, so I've already made a mistake. Deason is a professor at the University of Southeast Norway, USN, and an associate editor at the Russian and Global Affairs Journal. He had a stint at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow, working closely with the inimitable Sergei Karaganov. Okay, I think the real inimitable guy here is Pepe Escobar. It goes without saying that the European MSM won't touch him. Rabid yells, quote, Pustanista, unquote, prevail, including in Norway, where he's been a prime target of cancel culture. That's irrelevant anyway. What matters is that Deason, an affable, unfailingly polite man, and an ultra-sharp scholar, is aligned with the rarefied cream of the crop, who is asking the questions that really matter. Specifically, okay, and among them, whether we are heading towards a Eurasian Westphalian world order. The first world order, of course, was a European Westphalian world order. And by the way, Russia was included in that. Okay, but apart from a meticulous deconstruction of the proxy war in Ukraine that devastatingly debunks, with proven facts, the official NATO stand the narrative of NATO stand, Deason offers a concise, easily accessible mini history of how we got here. He starts to make the case, harking back to the Silk Roads. Quote, the Silk Road was an early model of globalization, although it did not result in a common world order, as the civilizations of the world were primarily connected to nomadic intermediaries, unquote. The demise of the Heartland-based Silk Road, actually roads, was caused by the rise of the thalassocratic European powers reconnecting the world in a different way. Yet the hegemony of the collective West could only be fully achieved by applying divide and rule across the continents of Eurasia. We did not, in fact, had, quote, 5 centuries of Western dominance, unquote, okay, according to Deason. It was more like 3 or even 2. See, for instance, the work of Andre Gunder Frank in a historical long view that barely registers. What is indeed the big picture now is that the unique world order produced by controlling, quote, the vast Eurasian continent from the maritime periphery, okay, is coming to an end, unquote. Okay, in other words, the domination of the world by the naval powers, okay, is coming to an end. Kay says she's watching Lindsay Wagner's show. 2, and Steve can't wait to see Tucker's interview of Putin. I'm sure that's going to be very interesting myself. I'll have to take it in afterwards. Okay, going back. Okay, the next section is Mackinder is hit by a train. And for those who don't know the reference, the first big name in the discipline of geopolitics was Alfred Mackinder. And Mackinder, who was a British political theorist, basically theorized that he who controls the world island, which is essentially the merged continent of Europe, okay, and Asia, specifically, the Eurasian continent. He who controls the world island controls the world. So he's famous for that, and talking about how important it is for powers such as the UK to prevent the nations of the world island from coming together if the UK wants to continue to dominate the international political system. Okay, Mackinder wrote, if I'm not mistaken, about 1890 or turn of the century or somewhere there. But, okay, anyway, Mackinder is hit by a train, is the title of this section. Deason hits the nail on the head when it comes to the Russia-China strategic partnership, on which the overwhelmingly majority of European intellectuals is clueless. A crucial exception is French historian, demographer, and anthropologist Emmanuel Todd, whose latest book, I analyzed here, and we're going to his analysis of Todd's book soon, but we first start with this one. With a lovely on-the-road formulation, Deason shows how, quote, Russia can be considered the successor of the Mongolian nomads as the last custodian of the Eurasian land corridor, unquote. While China revives the ancient Silk Roads, unquote, with economic connectivity, unquote. In consequence, quote, a powerful Eurasian gravitational pull is thus reorganizing the supercontinent and the wider world. Providing context, Deason needs to engage in an obligatory detour to the basics of the great game between the Russian and British empires. What stands out is how Moscow already was pivoting to Asia all the way to the late 19th century, when Russian Finance Minister Sergei Witta started to develop a groundbreaking roadmap for a Eurasian political economy, quote, borrowing from Alexander Hamilton and Friedrich List. Alexander Hamilton, of course, the famous American political theorist, and List, a German political theorist. Witta, quote, wanted to end Russia's role as an exporter of natural resources to Europe, as it resembled, quote, the relations of colonial countries with their metropolises, unquote, unquote. And that implies going back to Dostoevsky, who argued that Russians are as much Asiatics as European. The mistake of our policy for the past 2 centuries has been to make the people of Europe believe that we are true Europeans. It will be better for us to seek alliances with the Asiatics, unquote. Here, Dostoevsky meets Putin Xi. Deason also needs to go through the obligatory references to Mackinder's heartland obsession, which is the basis of all Anglo-American geopolitics for the past 120 years. And he's right about that, of course. Okay. Mackinder was spooked by railway development, especially the Trans-Siberian by the Russians, as it enabled Moscow to, quote, emulate the nomadic skills of the Scythians, Huns, and Mongols, unquote, that were essential to control most of Eurasia. Also, Mackinder was particularly focused on railways acting, quote, chiefly as feeders to ocean-going commerce, unquote. Ergo, being a thalassocratic power, that is a naval sea power, was not enough. Quote, the heartland is the region to which, under modern conditions, sea power can be refused by access, unquote. Which meant, of course, for a theorist from the United Kingdom, that meant catastrophe. The UK could not allow sea power to be denied access. I think we're seeing sea power, getting denied access currently in the Red Sea, aren't we? That's what leads to the Rosetta Stone of Anglo-American geopolitics, quote, to quote, prevent the emergence of a hegemon or a group of states capable of dominating Europe and Eurasia that could threaten the dominant naval or maritime power, unquote. That explains everything from World War I to the permanent NATO obsession in preventing a solid rapprochement between Germany and Russia by any means but necessary. The next section is called The Little Multipolar Helmsman. Deason offers a succinct perspective of Russian Eurasianists of the 1920s, such as Trubetskoy and Savitsky, who were promoting an alternative path to the USSR. They conceptualized that with the Anglo-American thalassocracy applying divide and rule in Russia, what was needed was a Eurasian political economy based on mutual cooperation, a stark pre-configuration of the Russia-China drive but to multipolarity. Savitsky, in fact, could have been writing today, quote, Eurasia has previously played a unifying role in the old world. Contemporary Russia, absorbing this tradition, unquote, must abandon war as a method, of unification. Cue to post-Maidan in 2014. Moscow finally got the message. They're trying to build, a greater Europe from Lisbon to Vladivostok was a non-starter. Thus, the new concept of greater Eurasian partnership was born. Sergei Karaganov, with whom Deason worked at the Higher School of Economics, was the father of the concept. The Greater Eurasia Partnership repositions Russia, quote, from the periphery of Europe and Asia to the center of a large super-region, unquote. In short, a pivot to the east and a consolidation of the Russia-China partnership. Deason dug up an extraordinary passage in the selected works of Deng Xiaoping, proving how the little helmsman in 1990 was a visionary prefiguring multipolar China. Quote, oh, by the way, that's the cover of a book called Globalist Man, How the Globalized World is Dissolving into Liquid War. And that's a book by Pepe Escobar from Nimble Books, LLC. I wonder if that is a company of Pepe Escobar's, but I haven't had time to investigate that. Quote, in the future, when the world becomes three-polar, four-polar, or five-polar, the Soviet Union, no matter how weakened it may be, and even if some of its republics withdraw from it, will still be one pole. In the so-called the multipolar world, China too will be a pole. Our foreign policies remain the same. First, opposing hegemonism and power politics and safeguarding world peace. And second, working to establish a new international political order and a new international economic order, unquote. Deason breaks it down, noting how China has, to a certain extent, quote, replicated the three-pillared American system of the early 19th century, in which the U.S. developed a manufacturing base, physical transportation infrastructure, and a national bank to counter British economic hegemony. Enter China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, the AIIB, I'm not sure what that stands for, I'm afraid, the de-dollarization drive, the China International Payment System, CIPS, increased use of yuan in international trade, the use of national currencies, made in China 2025, the digital Silk Road, and last but not least, BRICS 10, and the new development bank, which is the BRICS Development Bank. Russia matched some of it, as in the Eurasia Development Bank, EDB, of the Eurasia Economic Union, and in advancing the harmonization of financial arrangements of the Belt and Road Initiative and the EU projects via the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Deason is one of the very few Western analysts who actually understands the drive to multipolarity. Quote, BRICS is anti-hegemony and not anti-Western, as the objective is to create a multipolar system and not assert collective dominance, dominance over the West, unquote. Deason also contends that the emerging Eurasian world order is, quote, seemingly based on conservative principles, unquote. That's correct, as the Chinese system is drenched in Confucianism, social integration, stability, harmonious relationships, respect for tradition and hierarchy, part of the keen sense of belonging to a distinct, sophisticated civilization. That's the foundation of Chinese of okay, of Chinese nation building. Can't bring Russia down. Deason's detailed analysis of the Ukraine proxy war, quote, a predictable consequence of an unsustainable world order, unquote, is extrapolated to the battleground where the future new world order is being decided. It is, quote, either global hegemony or Westphalian multipolarity, unquote. Everyone with a brain by now knows how Russia absorbed and retransformed everything thrown by the collective West after the start of the Special Military Operation, the SMO. The problem is the rarefied plutocracy that really runs the show will always refuse to acknowledge reality as Deason frames it. Quote, irrespective of the outcome of the war has already become the graveyard of liberal hegemony, unquote. I couldn't agree more. I mean, just all of the military might was thrown into Ukraine in terms of all the super weapons that we had at our disposal, the so-called super weapons. The Russians matched them and the Russians destroyed them. The overwhelming majority of the global South clearly sees that even as what Ray McGovern indelibly defined, okay, as the Mickey Mat, that is to say, the military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, media, academia, think tank complex, that is very, very long-winded, but I think the Mickey Mat is very cute, cast the Russia-China partnership as the main, quote, threats, unquote. In reality, those that created the, quote, gravitational pull to reorganize the world order towards multipolarity, unquote. They can't bring, to summarize all this, they can't bring Russia-China down but geoeconomically. No, they can't. Russia and China together are too strong from a geoeconomics point of view and from a geopolitical point of view as well. Okay, and from a geopolitics point of view. So there's no question, quote, the conflicts of the future world order will continue to be militarized, unquote. That's where we are at the crossroads. There will be no peaceful road towards a new Westphalian world order. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride. This was republished from the Strategic Culture Foundation, which originally published the article under the same title. So this is a very significant analysis, I think. Okay, the linchpin of the whole analysis, though, okay, is the idea that it's unlikely that the collective West, okay, that the thalassocracy will accept the evolution towards, okay, a multipolar world, and thus will be up for a new neo-Westphalian world order encompassing the whole of Eurasia and also the collective West into a peaceful world system. He does not accept that. Okay, I tend to agree with him. I think a lot is going to depend on how presidential politics works out, okay, in this year. Specifically, if some of the third-party candidates, by some miracle, one of the third-party candidates emerges victorious, in particular, I'm thinking of Jill Stein, or maybe even Bobby Kennedy, okay, if he can get out of his Israeli fixation. There may be a possibility for changing foreign policy in a very constructive way that leads to the kind of Westphalian world order that is dreamed of here by Pepe Escobar. But if either Trump, okay, or Biden, or replacements of theirs from the establishments of the Democratic or the Republican parties, okay, should get into office, then I agree with Pepe. It's going to be a bumpy ride. So let's see what you've got to say right now. Guess I'm not getting too many comments here. Okay, maybe Alex Wagner's show and the Tucker interview of Putin has preempted me, kind of. I see I have only three folks here, Kay and Steve. And I don't know who the third one is who's watching. Kay is watching Wagner's show. I will go on to the second of the articles for tonight. Share the screen for Transcend Media Service. Solutions-oriented peace by journalism. I don't even know where this one is based, but they published this other piece from Pepe from the 27th of January, 2024. Will a South African victory stop the Gaza genocide? This is published under the title of BRICS on the 5th of February, 2024. And, okay, it's by Pepe Escobar. As much as the ICJ may be dismissed as a collective West farce, the fact is the ruling explicitly calls for Israel to stop the killing. It does, and it orders Israel to have its military stop the killing. 27th of January, 2024. Okay, that's essentially a one-sided ceasefire, okay, in favor of the people who want peace. I should add here, though, that there is continued progress on a ceasefire deal. If you look at the live stream tonight of Mahmoud O.D., he reports on the progress of the putting together of this ceasefire deal in Paris. Okay, I believe negotiations going on in Paris. Everybody was waiting for the response, okay, of Hamas to an Israeli proposal. There has evidently been a response, and it, is positive. They are still waiting to hear from the Palestine Islamic Jihad, the PIJ organization, which also is holding some of the hostages. So they're waiting to hear, on that. Evidently, the PIJ has said that they are sticking to their principles, in the negotiations. It isn't clear what that means, exactly. We'll be hearing more on that soon, though, and I'll probably follow that up in one of the short sessions that I do tomorrow. Again, I'll be trying to get done 3 20-minute sessions tomorrow. It's a little hard for me to get that done because I have a command performance today at a jewelry show that Bonnie is running here in the building tomorrow. And that's pretty much going to start my day at 3 o'clock instead of earlier, unless I can squeeze in an early morning stream. But that's something else. Going on with the article. By 15-2, the International Court of Justice, ICJ, has just ruled in favor of BRICS member South Africa and ordered Israel to take all necessary measures to prevent the genocide in Gaza. When it comes to the most scrutinized genocide ever, followed 24/7 by every smartphone on the planet, well, I'm here to tell you it's not followed by every smartphone on the planet. I wish it was. But I live here with a very nice group of people in this building, form kind of a little community, of older folks. And I can assure you that very few of their smartphones are following the genocide in Palestine. We are ourselves just a few rare, isolated people in the building who are doing that. It's fair to argue but actually that makes a point. Partly because of the way the mass media is covering events in Israel, and partly because of the traditional ignoring of world politics, by most Americans. We have a situation here where perhaps every smartphone in Europe and Asia and Africa may be following, the genocide, and maybe every smartphone in Latin America too. Here in North America, I'm sorry to say, I don't think that's going on. It's fair to argue that South Africa has just scored an astonishing win against Zionism. I certainly think Pepe is right there. It was an astonishing win. Not so much that the decision went for South Africa, but that it went for South Africa by margins of 15-2 and 16-1, depending on which of the 6 orders from the court we're talking about. And yet, as a global cynic, Armada argues in practical terms, there has been no call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Of course, it may also be argued that calling for a ceasefire only applies to a war, as in the case of the proxy war in Ukraine. Gaza case of genocide of an indigenous population perpetrated by an occupying power. That calls for an immediate halt to all genocidal acts. Essentially, this is what the ICJ has ordered. No, not essentially. Not essentially. I beg to differ with Pepe here. They ordered an immediate halt to genocidal acts because the genocidal acts have to be carried out by the military, and they ordered these military the Israelis to stop their military from engaging in genocidal acts. The South African Foreign Ministry has noted that if one, quote, if one reads the sentence, it's implicit, unquote, that a ceasefire must be imposed. No, it is not implicit. It is the confluence of the first sentence or the first order, and the second order. The combination of the two of them together makes explicit that there is a call for an immediate halt to all genocidal acts. The inestimable former British ambassador, Craig Murray, has noted that, quote, after an extremely damning exposition of the facts by South Africa, unquote, powerfully, quote again, and meticulously well stated, unquote, conclusions were inevitable. These are the highlights. Quote, the military operation conducted by Israel in Gaza has resulted in untold death and injuries, destroyed substantial infrastructure and housing units, caused mass malnutrition, collapsed the healthcare system, and displaced the majority of its inhabitants. This war has affected the entire population of Gaza and will have far-lasting consequences. The court has taken note of the language of dehumanization by senior Israeli government officials. Hence, the ICJ, quote, accepts the South African demand for urgent provisional measures to be taken for the protection of Palestinians in Gaza against Israel and recommends, unquote, italics mine, the following. By 15-2, quote, the state of Israel shall take all measures to prevent the commission of genocide, to Gaza. By 15-2, the state of Israel shall, ensure that the military shall not commit any acts, of genocide. By 16-1, Israel shall take all measures to punish all public solicitations to genocide. By 16-1, Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to address adverse conditions to life in the Gaza Strip, unquote. By 15-2, Israel shall take effective measures to preserve evidence of actions impacting the Geneva Convention. By 15-2, Israel shall submit to the court a report to all measures taken to follow the orders of this court within 1 month. Now, I have to say about the meaning of this. In the above, the recommends term, I don't think that is the term that is applied to Israel. I think that term, that particular recommends, applies to all of the signatories to the Genocide Convention. I don't think that the ICJ is ordering all the parties, of the Genocide Convention to take the following action, but it is recommending to them that they uphold, they support the 6 following measures. The 6 following provisional measures are not recommendations, to the state of Israel. They're orders to the state of Israel, and they are legally binding in that sense. That's my interpretation anyway. The Houthis and the Genocide Convention. The ICJ decision is binding. Italics mine, says Pepe. Yet even as the ICJ decided that Israel must take all measures to prevent death and injury and provide for all Palestinian humanitarian needs, including access to food, medicine, and infrastructure, what happens if Tel Aviv simply ignores the decision? Even considering that Israel must file a report on the remedial actions within 1 month of the ruling, all bets are off on whether biblical psychopathy practitioners will comply. The answer came fast. Israel's national security minister, Ben-Gvir, a cartoonish candidate for the role of out-of-control psycho in a cheap horror flick, stated that, quote, the decision of the anti-Semitic court in The Hague proves what was already known. What anti-Semitic court in The Hague? This court does not seek justice, but rather the persecution of the Jewish people. They were silent during the Holocaust, and today they continue this hypocrisy and take it another step further, unquote. And as Pepe says, that was my first thought also, psychos don't do history. The ICJ in its current iteration was founded in 1945. So yes, the ICJ was not silent during the Holocaust. It did not exist during the Holocaust. What the ICJ ruling certainly did was de facto legitimize the moral strength of the Houthis supporting, quote, our people, unquote, in Gaza. And this, while the US and the UK are spinning across the global south that they must strike against the Houthis, whose policy of defending Palestine translates as upholding the Genocide Convention. The US and the UK cynically evoke the necessity to, quote, protect international law, unquote. While, of course, they're undermining international law because the signatories to the convention, I believe Yemen is a signatory to the convention, the signatories have an obligation to do everything they can to stop, the genocide. And the Houthis have volunteered. And what they can do is block shipping, in the Red Sea to force Israel to comply, to force Israel to do a ceasefire and comply with at least part of the orders of the ICJ. The overwhelming majority of the global south instead interprets it as a peacekeeping force upholding the Genocide Convention. The Houthis, attacked by the rogue purveyors of the, quote, rules-based international order, unquote. I think that's beautifully said. The rogue purveyors of the, quote, rules-based international order, unquote. Sure, we make the rules and you follow them, but never us. That's the rule-based international order in a nutshell. In parallel, a crucial point has been underlined by crack international lawyer Juan Branco. France currently presides in the Security Council, according to Article 94.2 of the UN Charter, by South Africans' request. The UN must, italics mine, says Pepe, force Israel to apply the ICJ ruling. But he says no one should count on trashy Macronist France to do the right thing. The next section is the killing won't stop. From the Global South's point of view, it is no less than appalling that an African Ugandan judge, Julius Sebutinde, I'm sorry, Sebutindi, opposed all the provisional measures requested by South Africa against Israel, as the ICJ ruled that, quote, Israel's actions in Gaza may, italics mine, constitute genocide with intent to destroy in whole or in part a specific ethnic group, the Palestinians, unquote. It logically follows that U.S. complicity with Israel amounts to U.S. complicity in the genocide of Palestinians. The ICJ ruling, in fact, indicts US, UK, Germany, and other collective West members who all stated that the South Africa case is, quote, without legal merit, unquote, and should be thrown out. So it's no wonder that a team of 47 South African lawyers is already preparing a lawsuit against the US and UK for complicity. Whatever happens next, the hyper-committed global cynic armada will not relent. The ICJ ordering Israel to, quote, take all measures to prevent death and injury, unquote, certainly can be interpreted as calling for a ceasefire without mentioning the magic word. But what the global cynic armada really sees is four interlinked toxic items. No ceasefire. Kill the Palestinians, but softly. Feed them before you kill them. And you still have 1 full month to engage in widespread killing. As much as the ICJ may be dismissed as a collective West farce, the fact is the ruling explicitly calls for Israel to stop the killing. One may argue that the ICJ did the absolute maximum of what it can possibly do under its jurisdiction and procedures. Yet considering that the ICJ has less than 0 ways to enforce its ruling, it depends on the hyper-corrupt UN. The global cynic armada may have got the grim picture right. The killing won't stop. So Pepe Escobar, born in Brazil, is a correspondent, editor-at-large at Asia Times, columnist for Consortium News here in the United States, and Strategic Culture, in Moscow. Strategic Culture, in Moscow. That's the publication that violates the community standards of Facebook. He's also, of course, a columnist at thecradle.co. Since the mid-1980s, he's lived and worked as a foreign correspondent in London, Paris, Milan, Los Angeles, Singapore, and Bangkok. He has extensively covered Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Central Asia to China, Iran, Iraq, and the wider Middle East. He's the author, of Globalistan, Red Zone Blues, Obama Does Globalistan, Empire of Chaos, 2014, and 2030, which was published in 2015, all by Nimble Books. Pepe was contributing editor to the Empire and the Crescent and Tutto in Vendita in Italy, and is also associated with the Paris-based European Academy of Geopolitics. When not on the road, he lives between Paris and Bangkok. Yeah, Pepe's really quite a guy. So, I'm going to check back in with you to see if there are any more comments. Andy says, Joe, I'm here, but busy. Glad to see you here, Andy. Okay. The reason why I wasn't there at roughly 2 o'clock or 2:32, when you looked in, it was because I changed my plans on Friday and you were not at the Friday show. What happened was that some people were calling for me to do at least one long show, during the week. So I decided to make that long show on Tuesday and to start my 3 streams a day tomorrow. Anyway, glad to see you here, Andy, and I'm glad to see also Steve and Kay here as well. But now I'm going to go into the third of our articles today. This is from LouRockwell.com. And I picked it up there. I probably could have picked it up from Sputnik News, but I suspect that if somehow Strategic Culture violated Facebook standards, that certainly Sputnik News would have violated Facebook standards as well. So anyway, this article by Pepe is called How the West Was Defeated, and it was written on January 22nd, 2024. This is a review, okay, really an analysis of a book, okay, by Emmanuel Todd, historian, demographer, anthropologist, sociologist, and political analyst. Part of a dying breed, one of the very few remaining exponents of old school French, okay, intelligentsia, an heir to those like Braudel, Sartre, also Deleuze, and Foucault, who dazzled successive young Cold War generations from the West down to the East. The first nugget concerning his latest book, La Défaite de l'Occident, de l'Occident, quote, okay, the defeat of the West, unquote, is the minor miracle of actually being published last week in France, right within the NATO sphere. A hand grenade of a book by an independent thinker based on facts and verified data, blowing up the whole Russophobia edifice erected around the quote, the quote, aggression, unquote, by quote, Tsar, unquote, Putin. At least some sectors of strictly oligarch-controlled corporate media in France simply could not ignore Todd this time around for several reasons. Most of all, because he was the first Western intellectual already in 1976 to have predicted the fall of the USSR in his book, La Chute Finale, with his research based on Soviet infant mortality rates. But yet another key reason was his 2002 book called Après l'Empire, the sort of preview of the empire's decline and fall, published a few months before Shock and Awe, okay, in Iraq. Now Todd, in what he has defined as his last book, quote, I closed the circle, unquote, allows himself to go for broke and meticulously depict the defeat not only of the U.S., but of the West as a whole, with his research focusing in and around the war in Ukraine. Considering the toxic NATO-stan environment where Russophobia and cancel culture reign supreme, and every deviation is punishable, Todd has been very careful not to frame the current process as a Russian victory in Ukraine, although that's implied in everything he describes, ranging from several indicators of social peace to the overall stability of the, quote, Putin system, unquote, which is, quote, a product of the history of Russia and not the work of one man, unquote. Excuse me a second. Rather, he focuses on the key reasons that have led to the West's downfall. Um, 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 and the reasons are, okay, among them, the end of the nation state, deindustrialization, which explains NATO's deficit in producing weapons for Ukraine, the quote, degree zero, unquote, of the West's religious matrix, Protestantism, the sharp increase of mortality rates in the United States, much higher than in Russia, which is interesting, along with suicides and homicides, and the supremacy of an imperial nihilism expressed by the obsession with the forever wars. Next section is collapse. Okay, is the collapse of Protestantism. Todd methodically analyzes in sequence Russia, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, Germany, Britain, Scandinavia, and finally the Empire. Let's focus on what would be the 12 greatest hits of his remarkable exercise. 1. At the start of the special military operation in February 2022, the combined GDP of Russia and Belarus was only 3.3% of the combined West. In this case, the NATO sphere plus Japan and South Korea. Todd is amazed how these 3.3% capable of producing more weapons than the whole Western colossus not only are winning the war, but reducing dominant notions of the, quote, neoliberal political economy, unquote, GDP rates to shambles. Quote, 2, the, quote, ideological solitude, unquote, and, quote, ideological narcissism, unquote, of the West, incapable of understanding, for instance, how, quote, the whole Muslim world seems to consider Russia as a partner rather than an adversary, unquote. 3, Todd eschews the notion of Weberian states, quote unquote, evoking a delicious compatibility of vision between Putin and U.S. realpolitik practitioner John Mearsheimer, because they are forced to survive in an environment where only power relations matter. States are now acting as, quote, Parisian agents, unquote. Someone pronounced that, okay, as Hobbesian agents, but I think the correct pronunciation is the pronunciation that I gave it, Hobbesian agents. And that brings us to the Russian notion of a nation state focused on, quote, sovereignty, unquote. The capacity of a state to independently define its internal and external policies with no foreign interference whatsoever. The implosion, step by step, of WASP culture, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture, which led, quote, since the 1960s, unquote, to, quote, an empire deprived of a center and a project, an essentially military organism managed by a group without culture in the anthropological sense. This is Todd defining the U.S. At neocons. Yes, quite right. 5, okay, the U.S. is a, quote, post-imperial entity, unquote, just a shell of military machinery deprived of an intelligence-driven culture, leading to, quote, accentuated military expansion in a phase of massive contraction of its industrial base, unquote. As Todd stresses, quote, modern war without industry is an oxymoron, unquote. Of course, the post-imperial entity thought that weapons could be totally replaced by financial coercion and economic sanctions. 6, okay, the demographic trap. Todd shows how Washington strategists, quote, forgot that a state whose population enjoys a high educational technological level, even if it is decreasing, does not lose, okay, its military power. That's exactly the case of Russia during the Putin years. Here we reach the crux of Todd's argument, his post-Max Weber reinterpretation of the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism, published, okay, a little over a century ago in 1904, 1905. Quote, if Protestantism was the matrix for the ascension of the West, its death today is the cause of the disintegration and defeat, unquote. Todd clearly defines how the 1688 English, quote, glorious revolution, unquote. Okay, that was the revolution that replaced the Stuart kings, the Catholic Stuart kings and queens, okay, of England. Okay, I guess they were only kings, okay, of England. Okay, they were replaced in 1688, okay, by William, okay, and Mary, who agreed that Protestantism, okay, would rule England going forward from that time. 1776, okay, American Declaration of Independence. In the 1789 French Revolution were the true pillars of the liberal West. Consequently, an expanded West, quote unquote, is not historically liberal because it also engineered, quote, Italian fascism, German Nazism, and Japanese militarism. In a nutshell, Todd shows how Protestantism imposed by universal, by literacy on the populations it controlled, quote, because all faithful must directly access the Holy Scriptures. The illiterate population is capable of economic and technological development. The Protestant religion modeled by accident a superior, efficient workforce, unquote. And it is in this sense that Germany was, quote, at the heart of Western development, even if the Industrial Revolution took place in England. Todd's key formulation is undisputable. Quote, the crucial factor of the ascension of the West was Protestantism's attachment to alphabetization. Not quite sure what he's driving at there. Moreover, Protestantism, Todd stresses, is twice at the heart of the history of the West via the educational and economic drive with fear of damnation and the need to feel chosen by God, engendering a work ethic and a strong collective morality, and via the idea that men are unequal. Remember the white man's burden. The collapse of Protestantism could not but destroy the work effort to the benefit of mass greed. That is neoliberalism. Mass greed, okay, is surely neoliberalism. Transgenderism and the cult of the fake. 8. Todd's sharp critique of the spirit of 1968 would merit a whole new book. He refers to, quote, one of the great illusions of the 1960s between the Anglo-American sexual revolution and May 1968 in France, unquote, to believe that the individual would be greater if freed from the collective, unquote. That led, to an inevitable debacle. Quote, now that we are free en masse from metaphysical beliefs, foundational and derived, communist, socialist, or nationalist, we live the experience of the void, unquote. And that's how we became, quote, a multitude, of mimetic midgets who do not dare to think by themselves, but reveal themselves as capable of intolerance as the believers of ancient times. 9. Todd's brief analysis of the deeper meaning of transgenderism completely shatters the Church of Woke from New York to the EU sphere and will provoke serial fits of rage. He shows how transgenderism is, quote, one of the flags uh, of this but nihilism that now defines the West, the strive to destroy not just things and humans, but reality. And there's an added analytical bonus. Quote, the transgender ideology says that a man may become a woman and a woman may become a man. This is a false affirmation, and in this sense, close to the theoretical heart of Western nihilism, unquote. It gets worse when it comes to the geopolitical implications or ramifications. Todd establishes a playful mental and social connection between the cult of the fake and the hegemon's wobbly behavior in international relations. Example, the Iranian nuclear deal clinched under Obama becoming a hardcore sanctions regime under Trump. Todd, quote, American foreign policy is in its own way gender fluid, unquote. I guess I don't find that last part of the analysis to be very meaningful. To me, I don't see the connection between transgenderism and destroying reality. I suppose, I'm just a woke analyst, at least woke in certain ways that are rejected by Pepe. Number 10, Europe's, quote, assisted suicide. Todd reminds us how Europe at the start was the Franco-German couple. Then after the 2007/2008 financial crisis, that turned into a patriarchic marriage with Germany as a dominant spouse, not listening to his companion anymore, unquote. The EU abandoned any pretension of defending Europe's interests, cutting itself off from energy and trade with its partner Russia, and sanctioning itself. Todd identifies correctly the Paris-Berlin axis, replaced by the London-Warsaw-Kiev axis. That was, quote, the end of Europe as an autonomous geopolitical actor, unquote. I think that's true. That is what happened. And that happened only 20 years after the joint opposition by France and Germany to the neocon war, on Iraq. So what changed during these 20 years? The number 11, Todd correctly defines NATO by plunging into, quote, their unconscious, unquote. We note that its military, ideological, and psychological mechanism does not exist to protect Western Europe, but to control it, quote. That is very hard to deny following Okay, the bombing of the Nord Stream pipelines by the United States. 12. In tandem with several analysts in Russia, China, Iran, and among independents in Europe, Todd is sure that the U.S. obsession since the 1990s to cut off Germany from Russia will lead, to failure. Quote, sooner or later they will collaborate as, quote again, their economic specializations define them as complementary, unquote. The defeat in Ukraine will open the path as a gravitational force, quote unquote, reciprocally seduces Germany and Russia to come together, again. And what will that mean? That is inevitably going to mean the integration, of Eurasia, the whole, of Eurasia, including Western Europe. I don't know where the UK is going to fit into this. It may be still hanging off there as a part of a greatly reduced collective West, encompassing the Anglo-American nations, stretching, of course, into but to Australia, and including some of the island nations off the coast of Asia, but I think the island nations are going to inevitably be seduced by trade with China, to become a part, of the force that is dominating, the world island. Before that, and unlike virtually any Western analyst across the mainstream NATO-stan sphere, Todd understands that Moscow is set to win against the whole of NATO, not merely Ukraine, profiting from a window of opportunity identified by Putin in early 2022. Todd bets on a window of 5 years, that is, an endgame of 2027. It's enlightening to compare with Defense Minister Shoigu on the record last year. The special military operation will end by 2025. I guess I kind of disagree with that. I think the special military operation will end by this year. It seems to me Ukraine, day by day, is currently collapsing. The military front is currently collapsing now with increasing speed, and Ukraine can do nothing about it. Its air force is totally ineffective now. It has no air cover. Its artillery is gone in terms of its effectiveness. The ammunition is not there and cannot be supplied by the collective West, in the short run. The ammunition is gone. Many of the artillery pieces are now destroyed, in that war. And they can't be replaced because of the manufacturing incapability of the collective West. There's no replacement of those, in any short time. So how can the Ukrainians defend themselves? There's an internal political crisis right now where Zelensky, and also Zaluzhny, are fighting. Of course, there was a flight there by Victoria Nuland, a few days ago to read the Riot Act, to both of them and to tell them what should happen. But I don't think that's going to be very effective, anymore, because it is up to Zaluzhny to provide, the military leadership. The other man they're turning to, specifically Bogdanov, has never managed, a large-scale military operation. He's been managing, the intelligence end, of the Ukraine effort. That's not going to stop the quick victory of the Russians in 2024. Whatever the deadline, inbuilt in all this is a total Russia victory, with the winner dictating all terms. No negotiations, no ceasefire, no frozen conflict, as the hegemon is now desperate spinning. But Davos enacts, the triumph of the West. Todd's ample merit, so evident in the book, is to use history and anthropology to take Western societies' false consciousness back to the divan. And that's how, focusing, for instance, in the study of very specific family structures in Europe, he manages to explain reality in a way that totally escapes the brainwashed collective West, the brainwashed collective West masses lingering under turbo neoliberalism. I hope I am not still lingering under turbo neoliberalism, but I'm not sure what he includes in that. I see myself, of course, as completely opposed, to neoliberalism. Certainly, in my economics. It goes without saying that Todd's reality-based book will not be a hit among the Davos elites. What's happening this week in Davos has been immensely enlightening. Everything is out in the open, from all the usual suspects. The toxic EU Medusa von der Leyen. Yes, Ursula von der Leyen, also known by the Duran folks, as Ursula von der Crazy. NATO's warmongering Stoltenberg. Yeah, he always looks like a real idiot when he starts talking. Also, BlackRock, JP Morgan, and assorted honchos shaking hands with their sweaty sweatshirt toy in Kyiv. The sweaty sweatshirt toy in Kyiv, of course, is actually Zelensky. That's the favorite name of Pepe for Zelensky, the sweaty sweatshirt toy. The quote, triumph of the West message, is monolithic. War is peace. Ukraine is not losing and Russia is not winning. If you disagree with us on anything, you will be censored for, quote, hate speech, unquote. We want the new world order, whatever you lowly peasants think, and we want it but now. That is what the neocons and the neoliberals still think. But clearly, from Pepe's viewpoint and from mine also, that is not what they are going to get. What they're now very close to getting is the domination of world politics by a great power alliance that it will control the world island, of Eurasia, if we don't watch out and change our behavior very, very, very quickly. So there we are, not too many comments in the latter part of the show. I have a number of quiet people here. There are 5 people here, but I see only 3. I see Andy K. and Steve. If you don't have any more comments, I'm going to call a halt to this. I could say, a lot more about the shifting power structures, but I think that things are still fluid here in the West. I don't think they are set, in stone yet. The elections in 2024 could have very major effects over in Europe and very major effects here, as well. I still think that the establishment of the 2 parties can be beaten, for the presidency, that they could also suffer substantial losses, in Congress, and that if that should happen, we could see big changes in the foreign policy of the United States, and hopefully, a willingness to accept, a new Westphalian order. But I guess before I end, I want to say something, about the Westphalian order. And that is that after 1648, in Europe, the new Westphalian order did not result, in the end of conflict inside of Europe. The great powers of the 17th century inside of Europe gave way to the great powers, of the 18th century. For example, in the 17th century, one great power, was Poland. But by the end of the 18th century, Poland was partitioned. It actually ceased to exist. But in the middle of the 17th century, at the time of Westphalia, it was a world power. In the 17th century, in the middle of the 17th century, Germany was divided up into all kinds of states. By the end of the 18th century, while Germany was still not, a unified land, there were 2 major powers in Germany. They were Austria, and Prussia. Prussia rose to great power status in the 18th century. Russia rose to great power status in the latter part of the 17th century and the early part, of the 18th century. England became much more powerful during, the 18th century. And there were conflicts, there were wars, all through this period of time. The Westphalian world order was not a peaceful world order. It was not peaceful in Europe, and outside, of Europe, it involved the expansion of imperialism to much of the world. And, it was also true that as the 19th century wore on, there was a period of peace in Europe at first. from 1815 to 1914. But of course, the period of peace was very much disturbed. Was very much disturbed by the Crimean War of 1854, which was a major, major event, disturbing, the peace of Europe. And then, of course, the class conflicts were very, very important all through the 19th century, in Europe. And then the rise of nationalism prepared the way for the First World War. And then the Westphalian system was riven, and we saw the rise of Nazism and fascism in the 20th century, and the collapse of the world order, and the emergence of the two hegemons, the USSR and the United States, and then the fall of the USSR and the emergence of the United States as the sole hegemon. For how long? Not even 30 years. Very, very short period, of time. So, my point here is that a new Westphalian order is not necessarily likely to be a peaceful order. And the weapons, we're seeing the rise of fascism now too, you bet we are. And the weapons of mass destruction we have now threaten the very existence of the human species. I'm not talking against the multipolar system, but I won't talk against it because the multipolar system is just a reality. We have to live with it. But what we also have to realize is that we have to drive the multipolar system gradually and incrementally towards a world government of some sort. If we cannot do that, if we do not do that, if we don't, for example, make international law effective as a means for resolving conflicts among nations, and the ICJ case was a landmark, a milestone for that. But if that trend doesn't continue and become more and more and more important, and if the multipolar nations do not begin to work together to create a unity out of their diversity, we will not fix the climate emergency. And if we don't, that will kill us all. So, I guess I'm ready to end things on that. I would not necessarily call it an unhappy note. For me, it's a challenging note. It sets out what ought to be the purpose of the collective West and the collective East, as well. Job one is fixing the climate emergency for all of us. We've got to see that happen. We've got to make it happen. We've got to come together to make it happen. We must make sure the multipolar system is a collaborative system and not the kind of conflictual system which arose out of the Westphalian Treaty after 1648. Yes, there was no 100 Years' War after that. There was no 30 Years' War, okay, after that. But there were the world wars, okay, after that, and the Cold War. All that, okay, has got to stop. Okay, a few more comments I will go over. Heavy stuff, Joe. A lot to absorb. Russia going to save us from a new world order? No, we all have to. We all have to build a new world order together. Westphalia is in Germany. Yes, they met in Germany to conclude the Treaty, okay, of Westphalia. Steve Wolfram said all progressive shows ran at 6 p.m. about 7. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Steve. If you could be a little more clear, I'd appreciate it. Andy Candy says, Prussia, Russia rhymes. Were they cousins? Okay, well, all of the monarchs, okay, of Europe were cousins, okay, at one time. Okay, the Tsar of Russia, Tsar Nicholas, okay, the second, was the cousin, okay, of Kaiser Wilhelm. And he was referred, Kaiser Wilhelm, often referred, okay, to Nicholas II as by cousin Nicky. That didn't stop the First World War, okay, from starting with the cousin Nicky, okay, and cousin Willie, okay, on opposite sides. Okay, so you have to keep in mind. But I don't know, okay, whether Prussia, which by the way, there were two principalities. One was Brandenburg, and one, okay, was Prussia. And when Prussia first got started, it was Brandenburg-Prussia. Okay, when they first began to build, okay, a military force. And I recall somewhere in the early 18th century, the Brandenburg was dropped and it just became the nation, okay, of Prussia, which excelled in the building, okay, of military force and okay, which became a military world power during the 18th century. So Kay says, good night, Joe and all. But love you all. We love you, Kay. Steve Wolfbrand says, my ancestors came out of Germany, okay, and Denmark. Yes, but I think Wolfbrand is a Danish name, okay, is it not? And Andy says, we're seeing the rise of fascism now too. Steve says, good night, Kay. Andy says, the Armageddon Christians dream about. Andy Candy says, psychic Sylvia Brown once said she doesn't see humanity, okay, in 100 years. Well, you don't have to be psychic to see the possibilities. And Steve says, Doc, your take on Tucker interviewing Putin? Steve, I think it's fine that Tucker is interviewing Putin. I expect it will be a wonderfully interesting interview. I think that Putin is a brilliant man who's done brilliant things, okay, for Russia. And even though he's made some mistakes in prosecuting the war, for example, when he started, okay, the war, he started prosecuting it in such a way as to get himself, okay, a negotiation to quickly end it. He attacked with too few troops. Okay, there were military mistakes made, okay, at the beginning of the war due to the foreign policy that Putin still wanted, to implement. But then Putin learned and he took hold and he mobilized the whole nation, of Russia. He has to be considered uh, one of the historically memorable figures, in Russian history. Uh, one of the extraordinary leaders, who made Russia great, Peter the Great, uh, by Catherine, the Great. Uh, and so, uh, I don't know if he'll go down as great, as Catherine the Great. I don't know if he'll be remembered in a certain way. Stalin is remembered as great because he got Russia through the Second World War. I think it was pure blind luck. It was the Russians who got themselves through the Second World War. Uh, I think that in some ways Stalin was counterproductive, in the Second World War. But still, Stalin gets credit for that. And Lenin, of course, uh, at the end of the collapse, the regime, of Tsarism, he put back together the heart of Russia in the context, of the USSR. So he has to be considered, a great leader, certainly, at first. There was a contribution also from the standpoint, of the world. Uh, but we have to look between the Second World War and now. I think you have to conclude the greatest the greatest leader of Russia up to this time uh, is Putin. So I think that all kinds of American commentators and columnists, and analysts should be trying to get interviews, with Putin, to give him a chance to state, his point of view on a platform that will be widely seen, in the United States. Putin has made many great and significant speeches, certainly since 2008, and they have almost no currency in this country. They've been translated, but nobody reads them or pays attention to them. And in order to understand, what Russia is doing and where they stand, it's important for people to become familiar with Putin and other Russian thinkers. And Putin is one of the most important of the Russian thinkers. Putin is not, he's not a brute in spite of what is said about him. He's extremely intelligent and he manages Russia extremely well, putting together very, very diverse interests. The Russian Federation is a diverse federation full of ethnic groups, not simply Russian ethnic groups, but other ethnic groups too, and Islamic groups, also. Putin has been putting that together and he's been holding that together with his policies. And that is no mean feat. And there is no other central figure inside of Russia to compete with Putin, as a leader. I think the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, is an outstanding foreign minister and a brilliant man himself. But he has not been, the leader, of Russia. In the 1990s, Russia was prostrate before the world. It was about to fall apart. When Putin took over, and I forget if it was 1998 or 99, he began to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And he did it competently, and he did it beautifully. And it is hard to deny right now that Russia is once again a great power. He did that. He did that. And of course, he did that with also the Russian people. He put the Russian people together and the other ethnic groups, but he was the leader. It was his vision. It was his way, of doing things that brought people in that nation, together and enabled them to defeat the challenge of the collective West, starting in 2014 with the coup inside, of Ukraine. Anyway, I said more than I originally, had intended to say, but Andy Kenny says, Putin damn autocorrect like you, Joe. No one pays attention to hashtag dump the corruption. But you keep trying the voice, in the neoliberal wilderness. Remember, there are other voices, in the neoliberal, in the neoliberal wilderness, but they attack things only from the economic side. I'm speaking of the modern monetary theorists, of course, of which I am also one. They have been destroying the economic foundations of neoliberal thought for nearly 30 years now. There's a lot of literature out now. There's a lot, lots of knowledge has been produced. Ways of communicating with the public, are produced. It's fair to say, that MMT is now an influential school of thought, and it's completely opposed, to neoliberalism, and is organized around the idea of the public purpose, which is not, of course, a neoliberal concept. But it is at the heart, of MMT. So there are other voices. There are other voices. What makes mine different is that I also have a focus on some of the political mechanics, and that's where my Dump the Corruption campaign actually comes from. Steve Wolfbrand said, I think Tucker's views of life in Russia will be as interesting, as the interview. I'm sure they will be very interesting, but there, we have to keep in mind as well that Pepe Escobar has videos. I don't think they come from his channel. I don't think he has a channel. He's on everybody else's channel. But there are long videos, of Pepe Escobar talking about life and culture, in Russia. What it looks like. 2-hour videos, 3-hour videos. And Pepe has intimate knowledge of life in Russia and what has been going on there, and is very sensitive to the cultural aspects. And of course, there's been an opening to Russia by Scott Ritter, trying once again through his efforts to create a basis for peace, with Russia, taking trips over there but telling people about the people he meets with and what is going on in Russia, what is happening there industrially, but domestically. He has a lot to say about what life in Russia is like at present. So I didn't want to mention those names if you want to know what life is like, in Russia. But Tucker's views of life in Russia will be very interesting. Andy Candy says, Joe, damn Dollar Tree Jack Doritos up to $1.50. Yeah, last time I bought some of mine, I had to pay $1.25. So I told them to take them off. Pissed me off. But ordering, from Temu then. How much are readers from Temu, Andy? They might be better quality anyway. She says, I'll check back tomorrow when kiddos are napping. I'll be doing 3 20-minute programs tomorrow at odd hours. So what you have to do is you have to check, the bell on YouTube so you're notified when I'm going live. Okay. Click on the notification bell. Steve says, I'm digging tunnels. Andy Candy says, but your voice sings the song of the people. Saw your oldest stream. It was lovely, just like Bonnie. Well, thank you, Andy, but which stream was that? Because I'd like to know the stream where I sang the voice of the people. I try, but I'm not sure I'm always successful. But I do try to sing the song of the people. Gee. I think it was worth my doing this long show, Andy, just to have you tell me that I sing the song of the people. I do try. So please let me know what stream you're talking about. Okay, you have my email. Okay, I do have to leave now. Okay, but I'll see everybody tomorrow at odd times, during the day. Okay, I agree, Bonnie is very lovely. I was very lucky when I married her 57 years ago. That was the best decision I ever made in my life. Anyway, on that note, good night, folks.